folks. So what we're going to do is work on ball movement now. So if you remember in our game, we're going to move the paddle around and then the ball is going to bounce off either the blocks or the side of the game and continue. So what we need is a little bit of help for the debug so we know that we're doing everything right. What we're going to do is create some variables and then have these other two labels kind of help us in debugging where the ball is going to go. So without further ado, let's go ahead and make some variables for the ball. So up here, these are going to be global variables. They're called global because they're going to be used throughout all the different functions or events that we have down here. So we're going to create a variable for our ball speed, but we have two different ball speeds. We have horizontal and vertical. You may want to change these later in the game, so that's why we'll create them as two different variables so you can adjust them later. And again, we might want to be pretty precise, so we'll go ahead and put in decimal. I'm just going to use 2 for right now. And I guess I'll do 2, x speed. Very similar to how we did the player movement, we're going to need a direction as well. So I'm going to call it ball x direction instead of x direction. X direction is just going to be the player. And this one's going to be an integer as well. And off the bat, instead of saying that it's 0, we do want the ball to launch after the player has pressed a button to launch the ball. So we're going to go ahead and make it, if the x direction is +1, then it's going to go to the right. We'll do that. Ball y direction as integer. So remember our screen coordinate 0, 0 is in the top left, and as the y value decreases, the ball is actually going up. So we want our integer to be -1 there, so the ball goes up. The player first releases it. And it looks like we only need one more variable, and that's to be able to tell if the ball is stuck to the player paddle. Occasionally, you're going to be able to allow the player to grab the ball and actually release it somewhere else. It makes the game go a little bit quicker because they can aim at a certain block rather than just randomly bouncing around the screen. Kind of a good feature. So we're going to call this ball stuck. So I'm going to introduce a new type of variable. So we're going to do as Boolean. So this type of variable has only two different possible values, true or false. So either the ball is stuck or the ball is not stuck. Okay, so right off the bat, we'll go ahead and set this to true because the ball is going to be stuck to the paddle and the player will have to release it to start the game. And we'll mess with that a little bit later. So a Boolean is basically just a variable that holds the value either true or false. All right, kind of a lot of variables, but we'll deal with them as we get there. So the first thing we want to do is set up some debugging for the ball movement. So down here in our timer tick, very similar to how we used this line for our mouse position, we're going to create another one for label 2. Again, make sure you have your text property selected. And this is going to be the ball position. So this string here is just a little reminder for what that value is. Helps in debugging, especially if you have a lot of values to present. And similar to mouse position, we're just going to do ballbox.location.toString. Again, if we just did ballbox location, that is a specific point in coordinates. We need to convert it to a string to add it to this string. Again, it has to be the same type of variable or value as you're assigning it here. And lastly, for our third label, we will go ahead and put in the ball direction. We're going to assign this to the ball y direction, and again, convert it to a string. Okay, so if you test that out, hit your green button right up here. All right, not really going to see too much. However, you will see the ball position and the ball y direction. So it is going to start up. Okay, it's not moving yet because we haven't programmed that yet. Okay, where we're going to put our movement for our ball is in the timer tick. That is where we have to put all of our movement because this is going to be called every millisecond, which is very fast. We need to update our objects as such. So what we're going to do is create an if statement. The reason we need an if statement is because we need to check if the ball is stuck or not. If it's stuck, it's going to have a different movement and it's going to move with the player paddle. So we have to deal with that. So here's our if statement. So if the ball is stuck to the player paddle, okay, we're going to create a new X, very similar to how we did for the player, okay, based on where the player is at. So we have a new variable, and we're going to set it equal to ball box location dot x plus, and now we're going to use the player speed because the ball is actually going to be stuck to the paddle, and it's going to move with the player, so we need to check and see what the player speed is. So that's why we do that. And again, times xdir without the ball, because this is going to be, again, the player movement. So it's basically just taking this up here and placing it right here. And again, we're going to use the ball location. All right, one more line to finish this part off. We have boxball.location, very similar to what we're doing up here with the player box, setting its new position. So we need a new point, which is basically an X and a Y. We're going to use the third way to list out a point. So we're going to use the new ball X that we created. And again, we're not going to change the up or down direction of the ball. So this is going to stay the same, ballbox.location.y. So this will work for when the ball is stuck. Well, when the ball is not stuck, we're going to have it moving around. So we need an else part for our statement. If the ball is not stuck, then we actually need to create two new coordinates, one for x and one for y, and they're going to look very similar. So we have ballbox.location.x plus ball speed x times ball x direction. All right, again, same process as up here, only now we're using all of the ball coordinates and variables. All right, do the same thing for the y. It's basically that line repeated without the x. Whoops. Similarly, we need to set where the ball location is going to be. The only difference is we're going to use both the x and the y to set that up because it's going to move in both directions. So we have ballbox.location equals new point, new ball x, and new ball y. All right, so we'll go ahead and do a test here. Oh, whoops. All right, so our game is going to start off with the ball stuck to the paddle, and I have forgotten that our ball stuck boolean is set to true. So what's actually being called down here is this part right here. So if the ball is stuck, it's going to move with the paddle. So even though it's not in the right position, we didn't start it off that way, it's still following the paddle. So you can see that it's working. All right, if we made a small change and came up here and said ball stuck is equal to false, and now do your play test, now you can see that the ball goes off. Checking out our coordinates here, it's going to go infinitely because we haven't set up any boundaries. So I'll go ahead and save that for the next video, and we'll do that, set up the boundaries and get the ball to start in the right position and things like that. So I'll see you in the next